everyone. Uh, I was supposed to be back in January with something fun and cute and fresh, but I started working on game jams and honestly I really lost track of time. I'm so sorry this is the first video of the new year, but at the same time I really adore how this model came out, so I'm not that sorry about it. If you're new here, hi, my name's Kat, and I make 3D models, and now I guess I kind of make games too, but more on that at the end of the video. Y'all know what time of year it is, right? It's mid-April, which means spring's been in full bloom for a while, and the sun's rising earlier, and I haven't experienced rainfall or cold weather in weeks. For my friends over on the southern hemisphere, summer has all but hit, and this temperature's gotta be like 25 degrees Celsius or thereabouts, if they're lucky. It's full Aries season, and all the Rams are out here living their best lives, but, it's also 413. And as I've done every year since I started making my 3D models, I'm crawling back into my nasty little Zodiac emblazoned t-shirt and donning my yellow-orange horns because it's Homestuck Day, baby! And I've got a ton of stuff releasing over on Ko-fi and Patreon to celebrate, but we'll circle back on that because today we're redesigning everybody's favorite or least favorite, but if that's you, then I'm judging. Complicated, spider-themed girly Vriska Serket. I love Vriska. I'm going on the record now, that's my bestie, and she's never done anything wrong in her life. No, but for real, I think Vriska is one of the most interesting and dynamic characters in the whole webcomic. She's a nasty, snotty kid when we meet her, and she continues to be kind of nasty and snotty, but she also learns to be more mature and grows into somebody more capable of taking down gods, and I love that about her. She doesn't grow out of being a shitty little guy, she just kind of grows past it and integrates the more grating aspects of her persona into who she is down the line, and I think that's really cool and aspirational of her. Now, unlike past redesigns for characters where I did like a full overhaul, I actually really like Vriska's base design. I think she looks visually distinct from a lot of her peers who are that like plain Zodiac t-shirt and a nondescript bottom piece, but she isn't like ostentatious and over the top about it like her sea-dwelling friends. The casual layering of the jacket with the ripped arm, the Vision 8-fold and sunglasses, the bright red shoes as a nod to her totally platonic and not at all queer middle school girl-coded Scourge sister friendship with Terezi, the building blocks are all there for a cool new look for her, so she's less a makeover and more just kind of an upgrade of overall vibe, similar to how I did with Susan Stohielet last year. That above list that we've just gone through is kind of our guiding outfit tenets for Miss Serket, so let's hop into the design phase. The first thing I really focused on for the design was the robot arm. I watch a lot of doll artists, and as a result I've kind of begun to quite like the look of ball joints for a non-organic limb, so I made her arm ball jointed. I wanted to keep that kind of layering look and was originally considering a sort of tie-waist rockabilly look for her before reconsidering and keeping the original jacket and just kind of giving her a bunch of like little belts overlaid onto denim cutoffs. I did want to keep the cropped shirt concept I was playing with for the rockabilly look though, so her iconic Scorpio t-shirt has a gnarly cut hem. I also decided to give her some character specific jewelry, like a light aspect earring on her left ear, and since her dice got a bit of an upgrade for this month's project as well, I gave her one of the original Fluorite Octet dice on a choker. The concept sketch won't include these, but I also thought it would be cute to give her like spiderweb tights, so her final model has those. A lot of the fandom's more recent members have also taken her core themes that she interacts with in the original work and read a trans subtext into her, and I really love that. I think it makes a lot of sense for her, honestly. So her look is partially designed by this trans goth game designer named Bunlith, whose outfits I see on the regular. She wears a lot of like very elaborately layered belts and shorts and crop tops and stuff like that, so this is kind of a nod to her. So all of that considered and discussed in great detail, let's get started on the model work. I do what we always do around here. I start with a 3 times subdivided cube, cut off half, and mirrored so everything happens to both sides. I start by pulling down verts and sculpting to smooth them out to make the chin and jaw, extending the planes of the face downwards before I start working on the facial features. I'm not really going to be doing a play-by-play of the face. I create a set of circular vertices around the bottom of the jaw and back of the head, hollow it out by removing the faces and extending downwards to begin shaping the body, following along with my concept art's proportions. Once we hit the pelvis and legs, I close up the 2 quads' worth of vertices along the bottom edge to create the crotch region, adding lots of cuts to facilitate that like rounded bean-esque edge on most crotches. Pausing here to mention something. Something I really didn't like about the Eridan video was the way I did the legs on that model, because I was so scared of getting called out for like discussing stuff like this. Humanoid characters have crotches and chests, and beginner 3D artists have a hard time doing those bits. At least in my experience, I certainly had a hard time. So it helps no one to cut those sections out on the off chance that somebody takes umbrage with it. So I'm not skipping out on that here. I think you can tell from the context of this video that this isn't going to like sexualize anybody, especially not the like children. We're just discussing anatomy here, and I think that's normal. I think people are generally kind of freaks for making it a sex thing. So anyway, back to the video. As I was saying, with the crotch region here defined, I duplicate the leg hole this has created for us so cleanly, use the loop tool's circle function to round it out, and begin extending down the leg, following my concept art. I then fill in this missing section here and move the back and back-facing side faces so I can create a convex shape for the model's butt. This kind of topology really helps the deformations look nice when characters are sitting down or like doing a squat or bent double. Anytime the butt is somewhat tooched out like that, once I've sculpted this and fixed the shapes up so the butt looks like a butt, I go back and do literally the exact same thing to the breast, going between edit and sculpt modes often to fix the shape of the breasts. Before I hop onto the hands, I added horns here by grabbing a couple faces right above the brow bone, insetting them and making a circular base for them with loop tools, and extending them upwards and outwards like a classic devil horn. I'll be finishing these later on. Once these are both done, I start working on the hand the way I always do. It's another subdivided cube with 5 extrusions, 4 at different lengths along the front faces and 1 along the left face. I go into a ton of detail on this technique in every other character redesign I've ever done. I don't really want to rehash it here. You know, I've noticed that most of these videos cover a lot of the same beats, which does make sense for the kinds of stuff that I make, but I bet it gets kind of boring to listen to the exact same explanations for the character processes after a while, instead of listening to character design choices or discussing the character herself. I'm thinking of putting together like a video tutorial playlist series for each part of the process of getting a model finished, so I can just point to that when I'm doing stuff I've discussed a million times before. If you've made it this far into the video, sound off in the comments and let me know if that's something you'd be interested in, because I'm genuinely so bored of explaining the same exact pipeline every time I come on here. It would be really nice to just have like one video do all the nitty-gritty stuff for each process, and then, you know, just kind of come on to talk about character design, character dynamics, the media that it's from, like that sort of thing, you know? Anyways, where were we? Once I've finished modeling this hand, I apply the modifier, position it up, join it to the main body mesh, and apply the mirror modifier here. This is to account for it being a mechanical arm later on. I'm glad I did it here, I just wish I'd remembered to do the seams before I did, but you know, oh well. To join the organic hand up to the shoulder, I grab 6 faces coming out of the shoulder, inset them and make them circular using the Loop Tools menu again, and extend outwards following the concept art. Once I've got it to right by the wrist, I select all the vertices for the arm and all the vertices for the hand, and bridge them all up with the Loop Tools menu. I inset a few faces in the middle of the front of the arm to better sell elbow deformations, and pull out the corresponding edge on the other side for the exact same reason. To make the flatter curved-in horn, I extend the top of the left horn outwards and then upwards to create a flat top, like a cookie, before grabbing a few faces on the side to extend and create that curved-in tail shape that horn has. For the crescent horn, I add a circle mesh in object mode, hopping into edit, mirroring a few less than half on one side, and moving it inwards near the remaining set of vertices before filling in the faces. I grab the outermost edge on either side and angle them inwards a little bit, and add a cut lengthwise down the middle of this shape. To further emphasize the chunkiness of the horn, I pull the verts on the outside further inward. I then shrink this entire mesh down, fix and finagle it into the exact dimensions I want, join it to the main mesh, and bridge this one to the horn. God, I love the Loop Tools menu, she's so helpful. To make the other arm look mechanical, I start by adding little insets along each of the fingers and expanding them outwards a bit, resigning myself to having to do a little bit more weight paint and cleanup on the hands than was otherwise necessary. For each big joint in this arm, I added a sphere that I flattened along X and Y axes before placing them. To make them look like they were plates of metal, I inset whole loops around each of these sections and expanded them outwards so they flared out a little bit. Now it came time to do the clothes, starting with her t-shirt. I duplicated the entire chest area up to the shoulder, separated it into its own object, and fixed the mesh around the cleavage of the breasts so they didn't look shrink-wrapped in there. Shirts don't hang onto each breast separately like that unless the cut of the fabric is such that it's the desired effect, and I don't think that's very becoming of Vriska specifically. I did the exact same thing on the shorts, duplicating the tops of the thighs down to the bottom of the butt cheeks, and separating them into their own mesh. I then added a line of cuts around the bottom of the legs to make the shape of the shorts a little bit more pleasing and shorts-like, and then I added an extra extrusion off of them for the fraying piece. To make her glasses, I added a new plain mesh, mirrored it, and subdivided it and added a few cuts, pushing the middle points outward to create that sort of convex shape lenses have. I then placed and molded them around the eye sockets of the model, adding a subdivided cube and extruding upwards along that top edge to create the frames. I also extended that backward from the back face of the cube for the arms and do a similar thing for the bridge. For her chucks, I made a new plain mesh, cut into it horizontally, and scaled it along the y-axis a bit, pushing and pulling these verts to create the bottom of the shoe, before extending upwards for the sole. I extruded the toe box separately from the rest of the shoe, which goes up along the back four faces and continues on upward to for the ankle. I separate the two front faces for the tongue and merge their bottom verts with the top verts that they came from, just so I have a little bit more control over how the tongues look. I extrude the rest of the top of the shoe and the tongue independently of each other, just to give it a little sense of movement and so that it looks like a shoe. Once they're done, I shrink them down and scale them to the right proportions to match the concept art. Her chunky socks are just a duplicated loop from her calf, extruded down in big round shapes to create that thick, foldy sort of form. I fit them into the shoes with a little bit of sculpting magic. I duplicated her shirt and removed most of the front verts to form the top part of the jacket, extruding downwards towards the top of her shorts, flaring it out to fit the sides of her hips and chest, but looser around the front, waist, and upper pelvis. I extruded upwards from the vertices around her neckline to create that slackened, lazy collar her jacket has, and flared the armholes at the shoulder before applying the modifier here. I then duplicated the organic arm for the sleeve, adding puffiness at the base of the forearm and a fitted wrist to better match the concept art. Bridging the 2 sets of vertices at the top by hand, because sometimes the loop tool's bridge function is a little bit shit. For her light aspect earring, I created a new circle mesh and extruded inwards for that convex, rounded shape, and made the rays of the insignia using curves before shrinking it down and fitting it to her ear. Her teeth are quarter cylinders, turned into prisms that I extruded each face out of separately. They're subdivided for that curved look, duplicated. One is mirrored on its x-axis for the bottom set, and set into the mouth. For her tongue, I just added a new subdivided cube, applied the modifier, and rotated some of the faces along the length of the tongue to create that curved outwards shape. I gave her conical lip jewelry for the spider bite piercings her concept has to extend the sharp fangs imagery bit. Finally, her hair is just several curves beveled into that rounded triangle shape, arranged around her head and extended down past her shoulders. Straight hair is pretty simple like that. For her choker's pendant, I added a cube, merged it at the top to create a square pyramid, extruded the bottom edge, and did the same thing to it to create that D8 shape. I inset the faces a little bit and added a slight bevel. Her belt is just a subdivided plane that I extruded the edge around the waist at a slight angle with one side extended out of the buckle. I duplicated this and made it thinner, fitting it under the first belt. Her buckle is a plane that I mirrored on both X and Z axes. I cut a smaller square into it by eye and connected the vertices, getting rid of that middle face to reveal the frame. I curved it out a little bit so it looked hexagonal, and to join up the disparate looking meshes, I just merged all the extraneous verts and extruded it outwards, adding a bunch of cuts on either side and extruding out that bit that holds the belt in place. I then cut this whole guy down the middle and mirror it again because now I have to work on the legs. I grab 2 faces on the outward facing top face, inset them, make them circular, then extrude them outward a couple times to create that first pair of legs. I repeat this step 3 more times on the upper middle faces, lower middle faces, and bottom outer faces to create 6 legs, and that's the buckle and the modeling step all finished. Now onto the rigging. It's all based on the same old human meta rig that comes in Blender's rigging add-on, like most of my other rigs. I scale it up to get to the right size, do the necessary preparations like deleting the face it comes with and moving the bones into position, and then getting started properly editing the rig. I add my basic facial rigging infrastructure, which has eyelid, gaze, and eyebrow controllers, and bones for the mouth, jaw, tongue, and teeth to get a more precise, expressive pose, and then I add more bones for her hair, accessories, and jacket, just for extra posability and movement down the line. With the rig done, it's time to do the weight painting, which, as usual, does kind of take a hot minute. I did end up having to spend that extra time on the robot hand's fingers, but since I anticipated having to do so, it wasn't that huge of a problem. Instead of parenting the clothing straight to the armatures with auto weighting the way I normally do, I did the fancier technique of data transferring instead, so the clothes don't clip into the body as much and I don't have to spend 8,000 years refining everything. I'll explain it in June when I do my next video because, as you can see, I accidentally cropped out my entire inspector panel from the frame, and I didn't realize that until I put everything into DaVinci to do my editing. It's a shame too because the way I did that jacket was genuinely really good, and it's a real bummer not being able to explain that all to you guys. Once I've finished doing extra refinements to the weight painting in and around the face and adding seams to everything, I get to do the easiest part of all, texture painting. I love texture painting. It's easy and meditative and so fun, and you get to just make decisions on the fly without it being a whole federal fucking issue, so I enjoy it a lot. Um, it's just the best way to finish making a model, I think, just being able to freehand whatever you want. I start by slapping new materials onto everything and adding image textures to all of the materials in a block color, and then I hook the textures into the emission nodes of all of the materials in the shader panel. That done, I organize the UVs for each part of the model and begin the process of painting everything. I start with the eyes first, blocking in the lighter yellow of the troll's eyes and going in with a rich cobalt shade for her, like, iris and pupil and all that stuff. Since she has that vision eightfold going on in her right eye, I turned off symmetry for the eye detail painting and did a regular dark blue on the left and a more cartoony bug sort of eye for her vision eightfold on the right. The teeth and tongue also get painted in here. Next, I focused on her face. I like to organize my values darkest to lightest, so the deepest gray was gently highlighted with some of the lighter tones, so I could mostly keep those shades for shadows. To retain that nice mid-tone balance I found mostly on accident, I used the slightly lighter shades sparingly around the nose, Cupid's bow, and inner eyelid corner highlights. I also gave her cobalt lipstick and a lot of cobalt blushing around her face to breathe some life into her. Troll blood is on a color spectrum, and since her blood is blue, it would stand to reason that areas with more blood vessels would appear bluish. So anywhere that red body blushing generally goes on a doll, I gave a smattering of blue body blushing. You can really tell my media diet consists of watching people paint dolls, huh? Now I get started on the horns. It's pretty straightforward, mango yellow to orange gradient with pops of lighter yellow for highlights and pops of vermilion for shadows. I also smooth out the join between the horns and the forehead, just so it doesn't look so stark and weird. Once her face is done, I start in on her body. This model will hopefully never be nude, so I skipped over any breast shading and crotch shading, and butt shading, honestly. So I just shaded in her collarbone and skipped straight to the navel. I really didn't want to spend so much time on an aspect of the model that will never be seen, and also, like, she's still a kid. I don't want to have to see that so much. Uncomfortable for me personally. Um, From here, I just sort of hop around on the body, shading around the left arm and legs, giving her some cute nail polish on the left hand, just for funsies, and added that layer of blue blushing around the elbows, knees, and around her navel for some added detail. Once I finished blushing the legs, I gave her spiderweb tights. and just drawing the pattern directly onto her skin and making that whole bit more cohesive by layering a transparent black down onto the whole section. Continuing on in that vein, I got started on her clothes. I gave the shirt a tiny bit of dimension by adding a slightly less dark gray around the décolletage and upper chest before hopping into Clip Studio to quickly make her iconic shirt design. I gave my version a bit of a gradient and a pale blue outline and cut into it with the eraser to give it a kind of distressed look. Once I finished that, hopped back into Blender, imported it as a brush, made it a stencil, and using multiply for the blend mode just kind of slapped it on her chest. Before realizing I wanted to give the shirt that rough hem edge, like she ripped it while she was out getting her Lessa's food. I did this by erasing around the bottom of the shirt to give it an artfully ripped presentation, and then slapped the Scorpio insignia across the chest. I then gave her jorts a base coat of desaturated cobalt, adding some dimension by using a bit of a paler blue and using a really light blue for the frayed hems on the bottom. I love a frayed denim jort situation. I wear them all the time. Her chucks are a similar situation. I added off-white for the soles and toe box, and everything else is that hot rod red her boots are in the original comic, just given a bit of extra dimension with shading and added detail like raised rivets and a back seam. I was originally going to add that star patch branding, but thought better of it. For her jacket, I shaded it in a transparent dark cobalt, adding highlights around the raised areas in a paler blue. Did the same thing to the ripped off sleeve as I did to the shirt and jorts hem. erased little bits of it to create the illusion. Then I realized I'd made it far too light, so I added a dark blue wash over it to get it back nice and kind of grungy and gross. Finally, one of my favorite parts of working on the models, eyelashes and brows. I know it's such a tiny part, but it adds a lot of personality. I erase the base color of the image, add the lash line, and begin laying down the lashes in quick swipes along the mesh. I also remember here to add a similar lash line to the bottom eyelid, but obviously this one isn't 3D, it's just kind of there to look cute. And it's much the same for her eyebrows, just kind of erasing the base color and sketching the lines in with a tiny fine brush so it looks like little individual hairs. Once that was done, I painted her hair. Since the base color is essentially like a black blue, it was just kind of adding in bits of dimension and shine using a really deep cobalt with pops of brighter blue for the highlights and shines, and going in to redefine some bits here and there. With the hair done, it was just her accessories and metal arm left, which I definitely wasn't putting off because I was scared of fucking it up. Not at all. Unfortunately, I did lose a little bit of the footage here due to a power outage, but it was just her earrings, belt buckle, and the D8 on her necklace, so you don't really miss a lot. It was probably only 20 minutes. Luckily, those things were saved, so I could get back to work on the belts, glasses, and arm without too much of a hassle. I just laid down some color on the belts with some slight shading at the edges. Nothing fancy happening here. For her glasses, I made them alpha blend textures and got rid of the base color again so I could add the transparency values a little bit easier. To do the black side, I just added a transparent black base, copied the location for each of the dots of her Vision 8 fold in red, and slapped on some red for dimension. The frames were just an indigo base to call back to her alliance with Equius, who made her arm, just shade in with darker indigo and some purple, and added a few screws to the rims for some added detail. Finally, unable to keep putting it off, I did the robot arm. I added the darker rims around each of those flared sections on the fingers and arm to give it a little bit of extra depth, and brought out the raised edges with some paler gray. To make everything a little more cohesive, I took the texture image back into Clip Studio at the very end to add an overlay of blue to the mechanical arm. And she's all done! So now, without further ado, Vriska Serket! I'm genuinely really happy with this model. I think she came out the best of all my Homestuck models so far. This rig is great and offers so much movement and posability, and the model itself is really cute to look at, and she animates like a dream, as you could probably tell from the sizzle reel. I spent like a whole day animating. I had a really good time making that, and I had a really great time working on the model, and I think it shows. You can get this model, as well as the dice featured in the video, and a whole bunch of other cool printable things over on Patreon, as my rewards dropping right after this video. But you could also just as easily pick them up over on Ko-fi, because I'm releasing on both platforms concurrently for this set. I'm only going to be doing that for Homestuck releases, but I think a really big Homestuck sale once a year is a good excuse to do that. Sale's still on, by the way. It ends on the 14th at midnight, so check it out if you want some printable Homestuck goodies. Or models, I guess, if you want them. Finally, to circle back, yeah, I make games now, apparently. I'm currently working on one with a team, but one of them I'm also developing entirely on my own, and I'm hoping to have it fully voiced and stuff. Also, as you can tell from last year's video output, I really enjoy making VTuber models, but I know most Patreon subscribers won't really be interested in those kinds of rewards, so for these two new kinds of things that I make, I added new tiers. You can now, for the low price of £5 a month, get access to my game dev diaries and character concept deep dives, where I talk about programming, game mechanics, characters for the games I'm making, or you could get access to the VTuber Adopt Shop. It's a little bit bare bones at the moment because I've kind of been all in on these game projects lately, but I've got a new character coming in down the pipeline next month to coincide with a special project I announced last year and then wasn't really able to finish. Alright, thanks for letting me hawk all that shit, get all the promo squared up. I won't really be talking too much about it again until I've got more stuff to show for either tier, so you won't really be hearing about it for a while. I'm just keeping you all abreast of the situation. Anyways, have a lovely rest of April, and I'll see you all in June for the Pride collection. Again, let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a more structured tutorial series from me, but I will most likely be doing that. I've essentially talked myself into it now. Look forward to that sometime this year. Peace out, girlies, stay frosty, and I'll see you all soon. Bye!